In this video, I'll cover a number of regions near the lunar South Pole that would make good locations for commercial lunar startups, scientists, tourists, and space agencies. I'll give reasons why I think each location is well suited for a particular type of activity, in my opinion. Let's first start by scouting for the best location for large-scale commercial operations. Mons Mouton, large-scale commercial operations. Perhaps the most crucial area for lunar settlement and expansion will not be NASA's base camp, but the location where commercial space startups will set up operations. Each lunar startup setting up in this location acts as a magnet for future companies, as the cost of operation drops with the use of shared infrastructure, resource, power, and communications. I propose that Mons Mouton, a flattish plateau with a diameter of approximately 100 kilometers, would make an ideal location for large-scale commercial operations. The location is 6 kilometers above the surrounding area, giving a good overview of the lunar South Pole region. This elevation allows for communications, imaging, and power beaming down to outposts in surrounding regions, some of which may not have direct line of sight with Earth or other bases. The total area, assuming the plateau is roughly circular in size, would be around 7,850 square kilometers. To understand just how large the Mons Mouton plateau is roughly equivalent to 10 times the land area of Singapore. This location provides an enormous space for all kinds of commercial activities, including establishing large processing facilities for lunar soil, massive solar farms to collect power, and even railguns to accelerate goods or satellites off the surface and into cislunar space. For instance, Elon Musk plans to produce AI satellite factories on the moon and shoot them into space using railguns. Mons Mouton would make a great location, as a railgun requires a flat area to accelerate payloads to lunar escape velocity. Each railgun would require hundreds of meters of track at the minimum, depending on how much acceleration would be imparted to payloads. Given the size of the area, multiple landing pads could be constructed with a road network linking them to facilities and habitats. While accessing and exiting the plateau from the surrounding regions is not impossible, given its 6-kilometer elevation, a direct lunar landing to the plateau is the easiest method to access this location, at least to begin with. In time, paths can be prepared to allow surface transport to other key locations around the lunar South Pole. The plateau has near perpetual sunlight, providing reliable, steady solar power to commercial operators and allowing for power-intensive operations such as regolith melting and processing. Okay, let's move on to find a suitable spot for NASA operations. Connecting Ridge, Shackleton, Gerlache, Artemis Base Camp. Priorities for NASA and the Artemis partners are different. The base camp needs to be near areas of scientific interest and lunar resources, as NASA has emphasized their return to the moon will be sustainable this time. That requires reducing Earth supply missions by exploiting local lunar resources as much as possible. For these reasons, and for the excellent solar illumination at this site, I think the connecting ridge between Shackleton and Gerlache makes the perfect site for the Artemis base camp. A close second location would be on the western rim of Shackleton crater itself. Both of these sites are listed as candidate sites by NASA. From the graphic from a European Space Agency coverage tool, you can see the locations with the most solar illumination. Of the 5 locations with the most sunlight, 2 sites are on the connecting ridge and 1 on Shackleton crater rim. For initial base camps and lunar activities, solar power is vital, so prioritizing for high sun exposure would be a key criteria. The terrain around the connecting ridge is gentle, providing rover access to surrounding areas and ensuring line of sight for communications. The rim of Shackleton crater as an alternative site would offer stunning views of Shackleton's shadowed interior and easy communication with remote landers or assets at the base of the crater. Rover access to the floor of the crater would be difficult, as the base is 4 kilometers below the rim with some steep slopes of over 30 or even 40 degrees, far too steep for a rover to handle. Perhaps after the initial base camp on the connecting ridge, a second scientific outpost can be set up on the western rim of Shackleton crater. Malapert Mountain, US Space Force. The Moon's surface is within the area of responsibility for the US Space Force. With China and other countries looking to establish bases at the lunar South Pole, it seems likely that a military outpost would be established. But where? The ideal location for a US Space Force base on the Moon is the peak of Malapert Mountain. It's the high ground giving excellent situational awareness of the lunar South Pole, plus with almost 100% line of sight for communications with Earth. The mountain is at an elevation of 5 kilometers, commanding high ground in a location close to the lunar South Pole. From here, landing zones and resource sites could be monitored continuously. This ensures there are no surprises. With direct-to-Earth communications, the base would not be reliant on orbiting lunar relay satellites, which are subject to interference or jamming by adversaries. With solar illumination around 89% all year round, this location would be self-sufficient in power generation. From here, the US Space Force would be able to monitor incoming and outgoing traffic to and from the lunar South Pole. The US Space Force is tasked with ensuring access to the Moon and maintaining space situational awareness throughout cislunar space. The Malapert Mountain would be an excellent site for this task. Poincare Basin, far side. Aluminium recycling site. Poincare Basin on the lunar far side is a perfect location for a salvage yard. It can be used to reclaim valuable metals from spent upper stage rockets and dead satellites. The plan is to send orbital debris, which is roughly 50% aluminium by weight, on a lunar impact trajectory targeting Poincare Basin. With over 10,000 tons of debris in orbit, huge amounts of metals could be recovered and converted into valuable resources for lunar base construction. Poincare Basin is considered by NASA to have lower scientific value than other sites nearby. It has gentle slopes, often under 5 degrees, providing easy access and exit for rovers. The rim area above the crater has good illumination. Siting a metal foundry at the rim of the crater would allow for salvaged metals to be converted into useful parts. Cislunar Industries is working on a lunar metal foundry that converts lunar soil and rocks or salvaged parts into useful metals. Autonomous robots enter the crater, cut up crashed satellites and upper stages, returning salvage to the metal foundry for processing. The aluminium is converted into components or parts to support lunar infrastructure and base construction. Lunar landers would fly point-to-point hops from an existing base, perhaps at Mons Mouton, to the Poincare Basin rim to collect forged parts. Eventually, a lunar road network can be built to allow surface transportation of materials to other locations. There are still a few challenges, however. First, the location is on the far side of the Moon, away from Earth, so the site would need lunar data relay satellites to communicate with Earth or other lunar outposts out of range. There is a non-zero risk that debris from crashes would escape the crater. Given the size of the crater is 390 kilometers, it's unlikely though. Studies have shown that 95% of the debris would be contained within the crater area. The delta V required to send orbital debris to a lunar impact trajectory would be around 3.2 kilometers per second, well within the capabilities of future space tugs, such as the Helios tug from Impulse Space. Cabeus Crater, high risk, high reward. Cabeus Crater is large, approximately 100 kilometers in diameter, and located near the lunar South Pole. What's interesting about this particular crater is that we know it contains lunar water ice. That's because NASA deliberately crashed one of their satellites into this crater in 2009 and studied the ejected material. Water was found to be present at around 5.6% plus or minus 3%. This is what makes the location high reward. Millions of tons of lunar ice can likely be extracted from this crater. The only problem though is accessing it. The crater has sides too steep for easy entry, is extremely cold, and the crater floor is in permanent darkness. This makes it difficult and dangerous to descend to the crater floor, and even more dangerous to ascend back upwards with commercially useful amounts of lunar ice. A lunar startup that developed the technology to extract this lunar water ice could be profitable, while other companies would be looking at Shackleton, A more ambitious space startup could mine Cabeus. One possible solution that works on Earth is horizontal drilling or side tunneling. Instead of entering the crater, mining the lunar ice and returning to the rim of the crater again, why not drill through the side of the crater to access the lunar ice buried underneath? In fact, boring at angles of 10 or even 20 degree slopes is possible on Earth. A drilling rig incorporating a heating element can be used for ice extraction. Mining tunnels on the moon has several advantages to Earth. First, tunnels would provide excellent protection from radiation, including the occasional solar flare from the sun. In addition, the thick walls provide good thermal buffering, keeping the temperature at a steady -20 degrees Celsius during the lunar day and night. Pressurizing the tunnel provides a shirt-sleeve working environment and allows the use of Earth electric drilling rigs, which require air circulation to keep them from overheating. On Earth, side tunneling is routine for shale gas extraction. On the Moon, similar robotic drilling rigs could be used, teleoperating them from a remote location, perhaps directly from Earth, with a lag time of only 2 or 3 seconds. Powering a drilling rig that can extract commercially viable amounts of water ice likely requires a nuclear reactor rated in the megawatts, but smaller power systems could be used to validate the approach. Another advantage of this approach is that during and after lunar water ice extraction, a pressurized tunnel exists that could be used for habitation, or perhaps the tunnels can be part of an underground road or rail network. Scientific outposts. In addition to the main Artemis base camp, smaller scientific outposts are likely to be set up. Amundsen Crater would be a top contender, with its floor hosting permanently shadowed regions which could harbour lunar water ice and ancient materials from the South Pole Aitken Basin. The crater has interior slopes in some areas of under 10 degrees, making rover access possible. Other possible locations for a scientific outpost are Haworth Crater near Shackleton. It has a mix of flat plains and hilly rims with hydrogen signatures detected, suggesting extractable resources are present. Lunar Hotel. The moon isn't only for commerce and science. There is potential for tourism as well, for the adventurous and the wealthy. I've recently reported on Grew Space and their plans for a lunar hotel. Their first hotel would have an inflatable design and is suitable for 4 guests, while their second hotel incorporates local resources for construction and accommodates 10 visitors at a time. A suitable location for a lunar hotel must have spectacular views of the lunar surface with the Earth visible for communications and for that once-in-a-lifetime selfie shot. In addition, the local area would need to be suitable for excursions, rover missions, and a spot of lunar golf. Tourists, as we've seen on the International Space Station and Crew Dragon missions, also like to carry out scientific experiments, so ideally the location would be scientifically interesting as well. The western rim of Shackleton Crater provides dramatic vistas into the shadowed abyss below, paired with near perpetual sunlight and rover-suitable hillsides for guided tours. Resource extraction hotspots. Water ice isn't the only resource lunar startups are looking for. In fact, a far more valuable resource is available on the moon, helium-3. This element is expected to be abundant across the lunar surface due to solar winds continuously depositing it into the lunar topsoil. Certain locations with the right geology are better at trapping helium-3, making these locations the top targets for helium-3 extraction. The moon likely harbours 1 million tons of helium-3, ripe for extraction for sale on Earth. Companies like Interloon and Magna Petra have plans to harvest this valuable element with commercial contracts already signed. Ilmenite-rich soils excel at trapping helium-3, with yields likely 10 times higher than other locations. The lunar South Pole isn't the best location for helium-3 mining, but lunar startups may prefer to start there to take advantage of planned lunar infrastructure, power and communication systems. For the lunar South Pole, the best location is likely on the margins of Schrödinger Basin, offering a balance of helium-3 plus volatiles, such as lunar water ice. This site could be a startup hub for lunar extraction companies, interested in a mix of volatiles and materials for extraction and sale. Connecting the regions together. These different regions cannot be sustained as separate outposts. They need to be linked together into a single cohesive network. Initially, this would likely be a lunar road network, as roads are the simplest type of transport network to construct. This can be achieved by the use of leveling, compacting and grading tools, such as Redwire's Mason technology, or by the recent team-up of Astrolab's Flex rover and Astroport's lunar infrastructure tools. These roads will connect bases, facilities, processing centers, lunar landing pads, unpressurized shelters, warehouses and permanently shadowed regions into one single transport network. Later on, I expect a lunar rail network or perhaps a maglev system such as the float technology from NASA to be added to efficiently move extracted lunar materials to processing centers. For rail networks, using tunnels seems more practical as the surface of the moon is far too uneven for straight tracks to be laid, and with low traction it would be dangerous for a train to bank or curve. Perhaps the side tunnels constructed for lunar water ice extraction could be repurposed for the lunar rail network. A hybrid approach could be to scout for lava tubes in the lunar South Pole region. The tunnels would be graded and leveled with the floor compacted and sintered. The tunnel walls would be widened and shored up in preparation for use as part of a subsurface transportation network. A transport network would slash operational costs by orders of magnitude in comparison to rover-only operations on the surface. Final thoughts. With Elon Musk's moon-based alpha plans, the moon could soon see billions of dollars of capital in the coming years. A great deal of lunar infrastructure will likely be built over the next decade, including nuclear reactors and railguns. It looks like our science fiction future is finally becoming real. Do you agree about these locations and their uses? Have I missed any good locations or use cases? Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this space video, consider buying me a coffee to help fund more episodes like this. The link is in the description. Space News Live is on Saturday evening or Sunday morning, depending where you watch from. The live stream is a great way for you to share your thoughts and opinions on the videos I posted this week, or on any space topic in general. I highlight the most thought-provoking comments on videos I've received, along with previews of upcoming content. If you got the time, please tune in and say hi. Be sure to like and subscribe so you will see our upcoming videos. We make videos every week covering the space industry with an emphasis on the smaller space startups that aren't covered so well on other channels. See you soon.